Good afternoon. This is Dr. Matthew Dunn, host of The Future of Email. My guest today, yay, we finally got this nailed up. Avi Goldman, founder of Parcel.io. Avi, welcome. Yay, we get to talk again.
Yes. Hi. Thank you for having me. How you doing today?
Oh, I'm fine. We were chit-chatting in advance. Avi and I share the company founder, tech founder set of hairballs, headaches, burdens, opportunities.
Yep.
So
The woes, the
there's a
joys.
bit of a kindred spirit thing there. Tell people top line in case someone's listening. What is he talking about? Parcel
Yeah.
in a few sentences.
Parcel is the email coding platform. So for anyone who's not using a drag and drop editor built into their ESP, Parcel is the way to build that email. It's got a ton of power to just basically help you be more efficient, have less questions, be more certain about your code, test it, do all the things you need to do as you're creating really good emails.
You have in like website's gorgeous, by the way, a
Thank you.
code editor that knows email. So and I'm
Yes.
like, yeah, exactly. Why? Because email HTML not
It's
equal
different.
to it's different. It's a different
It's
language
different.
almost, right?
It is. It's got so many different challenges, and like even though it's HTML, like you're worrying about syntaxes that you don't see anywhere else in the world, right? We're working with MSO comments. We're working with Microsoft's like own CSS properties. We're thinking about the support from Apple Mail of being able to play with Flexbox, and then we're still working with tables, and so we get to do all this fun stuff and we have to support all this older stuff and like that balance and like having it like when I'm working on emails myself, like having an editor that actually has
Yeah.
all the autocomplete
Yeah.
and the intelligence and links to the right documentation and all that. Like, yeah, I'm a fan.
You're a fan. You're a fan. Well, I get to poke a tiny amount of fun at you. It's like you're working with HTML standards that are damn near as old as you are.
You're not wrong. Um, few of them got me beat for sure.
Jeez, wow, right? And
Yeah.
and as a you're a developer. As a developer, you appreciate like we come to say, God, can the tools know the dumb stuff so I can concentrate on the other stuff? And email has had a real hole there, I think, for a long time. Aside from, as you mentioned, drag and drop editor environments, which make some tasks easier and other tasks impossible.
Yes. And I think it's email super interesting, like just in the way that the industry moves. In right now, if you look at like the web dev industry, like and where like all the modern frameworks are, people are actually starting to pull from the email world of like, okay, let's create really nice UIs on top of really well built components. Like that is something that industry is shifting to. While email at the past 5 years, we've been looking at kind of the power of what we can do beyond just like what a drag and drop editor gives us. So it's like we're almost like switching places and like where kind of the
Interesting.
innovation is happening,
Yeah, interesting.
which is a really
Interesting.
interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a quick rabbit hole to go down, but they're not standards, but there are some more widely accepted syntaxes and additions. I'm thinking of Liquid for some reason,
Yep.
right? That they don't necessarily make the end delivery job happen, but they can make it easier to get there. And I'm always a little surprised that like stutter start, partial adoption, but no, nothing universal.
Universal.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Why?
we're looking at that. It's an
Yeah,
interesting problem.
yeah. It is.
I think so. It's interesting, right? Like I guess when you're talking about personalization and Liquid or Mustache or
Yeah,
Mailchimp's
yeah,
version,
yeah.
Django, whatever you're using, I think from like an ESP perspective, it
Mhm.
comes down to I think what's really well supported in the framework you're using to build your underlying service, right? Whatever you're using for your email rendering and template and personalization engine, like
Yeah,
there's decisions there, and also there's I mean, there's from the darker pattern, you have some better lock-in. And there's also like guarantees around like not overlapping. So Parcel does have a little bit of power that we can talk a bit about, like with components. And
yeah,
part of it, like to when I was creating that, was looking at all the popular ESPs, all the popular templating languages, the personalization languages,
Yeah.
and being like, how do I make sure that what I'm creating doesn't conflict, or at least have the fewest number of conflicts? Because you don't want to have people like having to like think about, okay, it's going to go from this system and then that system. So like having
Yeah.
differences does
Yeah.
have value there. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned that back and forth. You mentioned that back and forth trend. I want to delve into that for a second. But quick question: computer on your desk, Mac or Windows?
Mac.
Okay, ditto. And I don't think it's a Mac exclusive thing, but um, I'm guilty of running a lot of apps. Mea culpa. There it is. I said it. Lots of tabs. I've started using. I think it's the one hot flavor du jour platform called Obsidian.
Okay.
For yeah, have you heard of that?
No.
There's this niche called PKM, personal knowledge management, which is people who are a lot more anal about keeping.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, a
yeah.
lot more
It's
anal
like,
about keeping notes than I am. But
yeah,
Obsidian is just it's gorgeous. It looks a little like Parcel, honestly. It's gorgeous. It's getting quite popular, but a big piece of its appeal is that it's a complete not proprietary thing. All
mm,
your stuff is in markdown plain text on your own disk. And somehow
nice.
that's massively appealing to people, which is part of that back and forth swing that you alluded to, where we go from solve my problems, even if it's proprietary and wrapped up, and then we go back to hang on a second, I can't escape from you.
Vendor lock-in. Yep.
Vendor lock-in,
Tooling
fatigue,
lock-in, whatever it is. Yeah.
yeah, all of that stuff. And it's funny how we seesaw back and forth from that, isn't it?
Yeah, and we like it almost swings in parallel or an opposite, but like it swings with the other aspect of single tool for everything or many tools for
Yeah,
each
yeah, yeah,
individual
yeah,
problem, right?
yeah.
Where like right now where we are swinging more towards like, like entire customer management platforms that own the data and the sending and text and push and like right, we're having like multi-channel, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where we are right now. And at some point in the future, we'll swing back to the selling point being like we specialize in one thing and that is the thing we do and that's why you should use us. And so like that going at the same time as like you just can watch the two items
Yeah,
swing in opposite or parallel directions and just
yeah. And yet,
yeah,
as a founder, you don't get to go on both paths, right? There's limited time, resources, decisions, code
yep,
base, etc. You're like, I'm gonna do this,
yeah.
and sometimes later you go, wish I hadn't. Sometimes you go, that was just brilliant. Thank you very much.
You won't
What?
like to take credit for the things that you luck out on for sure.
Yeah, all the way to the bank. So,
Yep.
geeking out for just a second, the dev stack underneath Parcel is
Yeah.
what?
We use so my background was a very long time ago in PHP, then switched over to JavaScript Node 5, 6 years ago. So
Mhm.
that's everything in Parcel is
Nice.
JavaScript. Front end, back end, it's all running Node back end, React uh,
Okay.
front end using Next.js as the platform.
Okay.
And then all the files, are stored on a combination of a kind of S3 compatible bucket for
Yeah.
file storage
Yeah.
and Postgres database. And
The
just
Postgres database. Okay. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a nice, pretty simple stack. Some serverless functions in there just to be fancy, but nothing too crazy.
Well, and at the same time, that's a reasonably cutting edge like stack of stuff that you just described there. I mean, 10 years ago, if someone said blah 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 JavaScript backend, you'd
Yeah,
gone,
fair
right?
enough.
I don't think so. But
Yeah,
now, yes, indeed. Thank you very much. Oh my word, is that fast? Yeah, we're
yeah,
we're
it's
just tiptoeing into that
yeah.
terrain and going, I'm blown away. Um, this
What
is
are you looking at there?
um in our quest slash Matthew is stubborn to not let Apple dictate everything, much as I
Yep.
like my Mac. And in dealing with MPP for Campaign Genius, we did something I'd been eyeing for a couple of years. Our handling of images and pixels, in part thanks to Apple's nudge, is now on the network edge, not on the cloud.
Hmm.
And
Cloudflare or
yeah, Cloudflare workers
nice.
and the the performance scalability just makes my jaw drop. And I've been
Yeah.
around Big Iron for a long time, and I just go, I don't believe what I'm seeing, right? Like
Single digit milliseconds
single,
response
I think our
time.
average, I think the one that handles pixels is like 2.5 milliseconds average,
Yeah.
like the whole operation. And when, code update is like tickety tick, bam. I just did a global deploy by going bam, and it's just about that fast.
Yeah. So is that first load like the generation where like where Cloudflare, like the Cloudflare worker hands off to like the server to do the actual image generation, then you kind of have that really fast response, or is it all done on just on the edge?
All done on the
That's
edge.
wild.
Yeah,
That's
it's wild.
awesome.
It's wild. It just and like I said, the performance aspect of it just makes me go, wow. And like this, we arranged some friendly traffic and got buried with like 5 million requests on one weekend. And I mean, usually you'd be sweating bullets and just watching
Yep.
things.
Yep.
Wow. And this is all really, this is historically derived from, Google and others going, oh, we want the language we're stuck with, JavaScript, to do more, to be better, to do more, to be faster. And it's gone until now you can do your whole stack on fundamentally a language that was written in 3 weeks by Eichmann for the browser back in the 90s.
Yep. It's had a little innovation since
It's
then, but
had a
yeah.
lot of innovation
Yeah.
since then. Yeah, it's had a stunning amount of innovation. It's sort of and we're really jumping around here, man. It bears out Turing's thesis from the 30s that essentially all computing machines are universal computing machines, right? And JavaScript was going to become a first-class language. Why? Because enough marketers wanted to do stuff with it to make it get there. And
Yep.
and you look at the number of apps you run now, and I put apps in air quotes, that are actually, that's the language.
Lots of Chrome.
Lots of Chrome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And unbelievable performance and stuff like that. And it definitely changes the world of things. Let me hook it back to email though. One of the things I think people don't understand about email is that there is no compute engine. There is no compute in email. It is D-U-M-B dumb, and always will be, in my humble opinion.
Hmm.
And that limits what we can do within the email client dramatically. And if you don't get that sort of basic paradigm difference, and you wonder why email can't do X, Y, and Z that you can do on a website, that's why. Right? You get one remote call, and that happens to be image load. Like that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
There's definitely some clever things you can do with that, right? That we've seen.
Yes, there are.
There's lots of clever things you can do with that, but yes, you do have a single input, right? And you've got you have a single input and output, and you've got a single interaction source, right? Like no flexibility, unless of course you go to the AMP world,
Yeah.
which is a whole other thing we could dive into.
Which is a whole other thing. Yeah, we could arm wrestle over that one all day long. But yeah, it's a single input, and now the output, thank you, Apple, is proxied.
Yep.
So even that got just like, hands behind the back, right? Come show up to the fight with at least one tied back.
Yep,
Yeah,
100%.
there's a bit of a ship in a bottle challenge to make an email do the things that would sort of like it to do aesthetically, performatively, marketing wise. That seems so easy. Oh, my web guy could do that in a day. No, he can't.
Right, and that's how web people become email people, is because it's a fun problem, it's a hard problem, and
Yeah.
you get sucked in, and it's very hard to leave once you're in this world.
Yeah, I was
interesting.
gonna ask you about. I was gonna say, okay, why email?
Yeah.
Bright, energetic, young founder guy, and you're in email. Why so
I
much?
mean, honestly, the truth of it is that I got into email just coincidence,
Yep.
complete coincidence.
Yep.
I met some folks from SparkPost at a hackathon at University of Maryland back in 2015, and I had they had an interesting challenge, and they were very nice to me, and they put up with me, and I was like, cool, these are some good folks, and I they took me on as an intern, and that was just an absolutely amazing time, and I've just really enjoyed working on the problem and
Yeah.
just learning more. And there's always more to learn. And so it just accidentally fell into it. Actually, the hackathon just had its eighth anniversary this past weekend when I got to see some old friends who I initially met there. So it had been I think it was our 7 year anniversary since we had just met and since I fell into the email world. Um,
Nice.
yeah,
Nice. So like so many in the email space didn't necessarily plan to go there.
yep.
People are a big piece of it, like the community and the sort of
The community is everything.
yeah, and
Yeah.
the what's the word I'm looking for? The culture of the community, which I find surprisingly consistent, supportive, generous,
Thoughtful, kind, yeah,
yeah,
open.
long-term relationships all over the
Yeah,
place. It's really quite something.
it really is. And like, yeah, I mean, like folks you meet one day are just those are people you're going to know for the next 5, 10 years if
Yeah.
stick around an email, which is just an amazing thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Really an amazing thing.
Yeah. And it's easy to underestimate, but like there's a chart that some company does, like how much traffic is happening on these various channels on the
Mm,
internet every minute. And my friend and colleague Della Quist pointed out that they dropped email from that chart after a few years
okay.
because it would so ridiculously dwarf everything else they're measuring. And it
It
wouldn't be
was
fair.
moving the graph too
It was
far.
like pie chart, like, okay,
Uh,
email, and let's deal with the other
to go with a
slice that's
log
left for everybody
scale.
else. You're like, yeah, sucker's not, you're not going anywhere. So, it's
Uh,
the deriding it as old school is everyone's cheap, easy entry point. But truth be told, there's a whole lot of stuff happening there every day,
a
all the
whole lot
time,
of stuff.
300 plus billion messages.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, you made a bit more of an active decision to join the email world.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for asking. Well, yes and no. My first job with email in the title was in 1990,
Okay.
pre SMTP, when email was a corporate thing. Seriously, what corporate LAN email systems were a very competitive landscape for a relatively short amount of time. So, I was around it and then did other stuff and around it again and did other stuff. But in pursuing I've always media is kind of my focus and background as a scholar as well. I'm like, email seems like the big channel, but it's not keeping up from a tools for communication perspective. And by that I mean email is still astonishingly text centric.
Yeah.
And what relatively small proportion of visual communication you see in email content tends to be not particularly thoughtful, quite shallow, and the last decision made. Oh, get that from clip art and we're done. Arrgh, right? Arrgh. When most other media channels, if you really look at it, most other media channels are becoming more and more visual, more and more video centric, which won't happen in
Yep.
email, more and more interactive, at least to some extent. It's like, so email could do more than it's doing. Let's see if we can help nudge that along, was the thing that pulled me back into it. I'm like, sort of
Awesome.
I wonder if this is possible. Click. Damn, that
Oh,
works. Huh.
all
Why
right.
is nobody doing that?
Yep. That's uh you got to be careful hacking. It just might take the next 3 years of your life.
That is for darn sure. But you end up knowing a whole bunch of stuff you didn't know by the end of
Yes, you do. Yes, you
that
do.
time frame, right? Did you expect to go down the Node JavaScript? Like, was that a super delivered? I'm going to go down that rabbit hole and say goodbye to PHP.
Yeah, I think that when I was leaving PHP, it was more that there was more entry level content being made, I think, for Node, which I think really helped me along. So,
Yeah.
like, it was purely like education resources. There was a lot of stuff going on in the PHP world too, and I think I just wasn't very well integrated into the PHP community, and I fell into the Node one, and that was it. Um,
Interesting.
yeah,
Interesting. I did it bass backwards, sort of. I mean, I realized for the stuff that we were creating that I needed to sort of I hadn't touched hands-on dev in a long time. Like, okay, start over. Think Python might be the way to go, which is a decision I'm very happy with. Like
Okay.
Python is the bomb, dead
Yep.
useful language, but more and more stuff that needed to be done not on the back end, like more JavaScript, a little more this. Okay, let's try Node. Let's tinker with workers and like
Yep.
that. And they're decently complementary. Have not gotten to do what you've done, which is a top to bottom, consistent stack. But it's okay. You only do so much
Yeah.
in a day.
I and I think even like honestly, even with everything being JavaScript, the number of tools in the tool chain for an entire JavaScript stack is ridiculous. Like
Yeah,
the difference between running the serverless functions and the Firebase stuff and the
yeah,
actual server and the React like front end, like each of them just has a different build tool
yeah,
or a different dev tool and a different
yeah,
deployment target and a
yeah.
different CI/CD tool that's actually doing the deployment because of some proprietary something. Like the amount of tooling there is just still a whole learning curve for each thing, even though it's all the same language.
It's a lot. It's a lot to keep track of. Did you track that controversy recently? What was the JavaScript library for color that the guy blew up? Did you read about this?
I missed that one. There's a
Super
lot of
common.
those.
I think an npm library. I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
open source. Developer been working on it for years, and it had hundreds of thousands of deployments. And the
Yep.
guy is like, I'm tired of laboring away and watching, big cloud companies make a ton of money while I get nothing out of this. So he
Yeah.
basically screwed his code base and let
Mm,
everybody pull the latest version and watch theirs go bonk on their face.
wow. Yeah.
Aha.
That is, I mean, that's a tough one.
You talk about the tooling and the deployment and the pull request and like all of the pieces involved that aren't just of your making.
Yep.
And then you go, there's a big dependency on, bad actor, good actor.
Yeah, there's so much trust in the ecosystem that's been recently, like it's not even always about someone being an act. Like first of all, open source, maintainers just that is a that is a tough thing to get into, and you don't know what you're getting into when you get into it. Like you have no awareness of it, or at least I have known many people who have no awareness of it. Then you're dropped into it, and you realize that people are depending on your code for their jobs, their livelihoods, and there's fear around that, and there's expectations, and you make no money from it.
Make no
And
money
so
from it.
like that's a whole thing in itself. And then people who aren't bad actors, but like NPM recently is encouraging everyone to turn on 2FA because there have been some
Sure.
hacks and
Sure.
people have
Yeah.
been publishing, malicious versions of popular code bases. So like
Yeah.
it's a tough issue.
Yeah.
It's a rough one.
Yeah.
I don't know
And
the
at the same
answer.
time, it makes the world go around right now,
Yep.
right? Like more and more, most and cloud infrastructure, open source, this piled on top of it, and yeah, will we eventually have to actually regulate instead of self-regulate in that world?
So there is a new tool that's popping up because we all need another tool. But it's called, I think it's Socket Security, if I remember it correctly.
Hmm.
Let's see. Socket.dev. So it's a new tool that is kind of, I think, analyzing NPM packages. They have a GitHub action where it will automatically scan when new things come into and they basically give each package a score to kind of help detect and handle and proactively look for kind of supply chain code issues. So it's definitely like there's definitely movement there, which is great to see because you know there is probably too much trust in the system right now.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Agreed, agreed.
Yeah.
And that's given us velocity, but risk.
Yep.
Lots, lots and lots and lots
Lots
of
of
risk.
risk.
Are you a maintainer of or contributor to open source?
Yeah, I've done that in the past. I've done it less recently, purely because I don't have the consistency that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
to really, be a good open contributor to the open source community. I try to share my code whenever I can.
Yeah.
But I think that the things that I'm making are, very specific, very niche, and I'm okay with that.
So, like, you know, Richard Stallman gets paid by someone else to do other stuff. If he had to make a living with the code that he wants to give away, he might have a different perspective on it, to
Yeah.
be blunt. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
It's a tough, I mean, we depend on it so much. There's got to be some way for those folks to make money and to make the system sustainable.
yeah, yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that one works out. I mean, the opportunity it makes for, for someone in your shoes, like with a vision to start a company, do something better, help customers solve a really big, complex problems. Like
Yeah,
you wouldn't have done it without the open source ecosystem, I'm sure.
100% not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ditto, ditto.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Switch gears a sec.
Yeah.
Parcel V1 shipped, what'd you say, 3 or 4 months ago?
Yeah, January 25th.
Congratulations. That is big.
Thank you.
That
That
is
was very
big.
good. Yeah.
What did it feel a little scary to push the the go button?
I think it was a very relatively calm experience.
Yeah.
Like I've been more scared for other launches I've done in the past. Like when I first opened up the beta, that was scarier. But with this, I had like very reasonable expectations of it and understood that this was just the beginning of a next step and that there was going to be a lot to follow. And so I wasn't too worried about, turning it on and watching everything go up. It was more turning it on and making more people aware and better education and just starting that whole push. Like before V1, we were doing zero outbound marketing. I would tweet about new work and that was it. It was all the growth, all sign up was purely community and word of mouth. And so we, started to do more, actual email stuff and newsletters and we, actually created a LinkedIn page. And so we're starting to do that work. But that was really what the turning point was. At that point, I think we were already a month and a half into kind of the stability of the V1 and like hitting all the problems we wanted to solve with the product. It was more just deciding now we're ready to go out into the world and talk about something we're really proud of.
So the target, your ideal customer, a new one walks in the door tomorrow. What do they look like?
Yeah, so there's two folks who I really end up working with a lot. Um, Brand folks, right? People who are in-house, people who are really, detail oriented, who are creating campaigns or using multiple platforms, that sort of thing. And they have very, very specific needs of keeping everything on brand and being able to test easily and, working with other people on their team, and then getting that email into their ESP, into their sending platform. And then on the other side of things, you have freelancers, agencies, folks who are, creating for multiple brands who are working with clients. And so those are and at the end of the day, it's always someone who's working with code or with content. So, they're email developers, they're copywriters, marketers, folks who need to be involved in that process.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And I guess more the, copywriting and marketers more on the brand side. On the agency side, it's mostly email devs.
Got it. Do you have a hard time? Do you have a hard time getting them to give up habits and muscle memory from the drag and drop, building the platform editor? Are they going, thank God I've been waiting for you. I wanted to do all these things that we couldn't do.
I think there's a little bit of both for
Okay.
sure. There's definitely like, oh, this is cool. There's a lot of power here.
Yeah.
And also you'll have that same feeling on a single team, right? Someone who has a more like Parcel serves a very technical audience, right, within the marketing world. And so, there are people who are just jazzed about being able to really take advantage of everything they can do and really have a lot of power.
Yeah.
And then there are folks on the same team who, are, might struggle a bit more. And that's something we're looking at is like, how do we make everyone feel welcome to the platform and help them, do the development, help them create the content without feeling like they're, not empowered to do that. Like, Naomi West, who helps with the Parcel marketing, before she was working with us on marketing, she was using Parcel. And when she signed up, she had like she had sent me a Twitter DM and was just like, this is awesome. Like I feel comfortable kind of exploring. And I think
Nice.
that there was like an intimidation factor in code um, for folks who don't have a strong
Yeah.
technical background.
Yeah.
And so that's something I've heard a few times where like people come into Parcel and they're kind of more free to explore because it's a tool made for email marketing. There's less tooling, less work to get set up, and it's all kind of there for you. So you're able to jump in and make mistakes and see where the mistakes are, navigate the code more confidently. And so like that's been a big thing is even for folks who don't have that background can come in and get started, start learning.
Nice. Nice. That's not an easy thing to achieve either. Like, so yeah, congrats.
Thank you.
That speaks volumes right there. Um, that we were talking about this in terms of technical swing back and forth, but a different kind of swing back and forth that occurs to me is that it is from the let's call it the drag and drop end of the pendulum. The sort of will handle all of it invisibly, and all you have to do is move blocks around, which works, but only up to a point because of the
Yep.
underlying constraints of technology and dumb endpoint and stuff like that. And then the you can do
Complete
more, but it's a
custom.
little more technical or a lot
Yeah.
more technical. That's a tough balancing act.
Yeah. And I don't actually see those as really competing.
Yeah,
If that makes, I
yeah,
don't know if that
yeah.
makes
No, I
sense,
agree.
but like they serve different audiences and the people who are using different tools for different jobs have reasons, right? They have internal constraints that lead them to make decisions. And so, the decisions they make. So, a lot of folks who are coming to use Parcel weren't using a drag and drop editor before. It's not
Oh,
like Parcel is
interesting.
pulling them away from that.
Interesting.
They were,
Okay. Yeah.
or if they were, they're using it in combination with doing some customization, and they might still be using it in combination. They might create their initial template and then do
Yeah.
customization that they couldn't do.
Yeah.
They might be using Parcel to create code, like they have a base template and they're creating individual blocks that are kind of special,
Right.
and then going back to the drag and drop editor and throwing it into those custom HTML blocks. So I really see them as complementary,
Yeah.
problems and complementary tool sets more than competing, because
Yeah.
they have overlapping use cases, but really different. I think the fundamentals, the reasons that you go one way or another are different. And so,
And then for the
yeah,
right team with the right mix of skills, using both in combination may be the
yeah,
best way to get there.
drag and drop and visual editor is an amazing thing to have, and being able to customize and control is also an amazing thing to have. And there's no reason you should be choosing between them.
Yeah, it becomes a lot to keep track of. We Campaign
That's fair.
Genius, Campaign Genius. We're lucky enough to be partners and work with the guys at Be Free.
Yep.
Terrifically run company, growing like a rocket, and their editor, their drag and drop editor, is like it's just glorious and gorgeous. And I keep wanting to get under the hood, so I like both of them, right? I mean, our stuff's an add-on in B,
Yep.
so we did have to get under the hood, but going back and forth between those two things, like, oh, look at this, amazing, hundreds and thousands of templates, and it's all drag and drop, but I want to do something that I can't do. Where's the little carrot symbol? Where's the little hidden switch so I can get under the hood and
Yep. And do all the little things you want to do.
yeah, tweak it a little bit, which is like,
Yep.
yeah, I guess it's a natural swing back and forth. I watch dev tools in the pure software domain, and there's been that same kind of like, are we going to truly go into a no code world? Are you smoking stuff? No, never. Why? Complexity is complexity. I don't care how
Exactly.
you're doing it.
Exactly. So there's just that swing and that finding that balance, right? And
Yeah.
giving people the right tools at the right time. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well put. Right tools at the right time. Does Parcel do the handoff job via API to various ESPs?
Coming soon to an account
Coming
near
soon.
you.
Okay.
Yeah. We're working on that this quarter.
I've touched a bit of that, and I know exactly what you mean by it's hard because there's absolutely no consistency.
Yep. Creating an internal interface, right? An internal API to serve
Yeah.
all those different ESPs
Yeah.
is the whole thing. So we've done a good job, I think, of getting like a handful done.
Yeah.
And now we're
Good.
looking at the visual side. How do we
Yeah.
serve that, that nicely to the user and make it easy for them to to be confident that this is getting, pushed and that they're not overwriting the work they'd already done. If they'd made a customization there, are they aware that that's gonna do
Yes.
some overwrite? So like, there's
Yes.
just all the concerns that are making sure that you're communicating clearly to the user, helping them make the right decisions, and giving them an easy enough way to do it. Right?
Ugh.
It's a whole game.
It's a
It's a
whole
whole
game. Well,
challenge.
you also have that. We had a different company, different project, but we had a project that got us tied into Facebook's APIs for a while. And then within a year or so of that, I realized that just the sheer maintenance nightmare of one, keeping track of the user's credentials and auth and permissions to do the job on their behalf.
Yep.
Two, the constant changes and updates and sorry, you can't do that anymore from the Facebook side. And at the point where I finally just said, shoot it, right? We're not going to do any of that. Why? The maintenance load was abysmal and I just couldn't see it making sense. And
Yeah.
it's a tough thing. You sort of, can I borrow your car keys? Right? Authorization, right? Can I borrow your
Yep.
car keys? I'll hang on to them. I'll keep them safe. Sure.
Yep. There's a lot of those the concerning security concerns for
Security
sure.
concerns, expiration updates. Oh yeah, Fred changed the password. That's why everything broke.
Yep.
Thanks, Fred.
Yeah, users API keys are tied to users so often, which makes perfect
Yes.
sense.
Yes.
And then a user
But
gets removed and everything's broken, and
yes.
that's a whole rabbit hole to go down and
It's
try to
a,
figure out who changed what and was
yeah.
it what system broke. So
Yeah. Yeah. I
yeah,
like the you draw the ecosystem diagram. It's like, oh crikey, I need a bigger
yep,
whiteboard, right?
exactly.
Did I hear you mention Firebase, by the way?
Yeah,
Is Firebase your like auth side or
Firebase is actually part of the real-time collab stuff that we're working on right now.
oh
It's an
cool.
experiment,
Yeah,
so
cool.
we're working on that hopefully in the next couple of weeks. If all goes according to plan, you'll be able to do like Google Docs style editing inside
Yes.
of Parcel, so multiple users,
Wow.
real time. So today, if you turn on the experiment, you can see files get synced, renames, moves, all that, settings
Yeah.
changes, and the last big piece is full real time collab editing. So being able to go in and just make those changes and do all that work together.
I could see why, from what I've worked with Firebase a bit, I can see why you use it for that. It's like a lot of levers there
Yep,
that you didn't have to build.
exactly. If I don't have to maintain the servers, that's a good thing.
Did is GCP Google Cloud Platform a big
Mhm.
piece of the world for you?
Actually, we use there's a
AWS.
lot of fun different providers. We actually don't use AWS. I am
Interesting.
not a fan of just the user experience. I am not a DevOps person. My experience with that is very limited. I am bad at it. And I'm willing to pay more to have that part of my job more automated and easier to deal with is the reality of it. So Firebase for the real-time stuff, Netlify for some serverless functions, Vercel for Next.js, like the front end hosting. And then there's a company called render.com, which is kind of like Heroku.
Okay.
It's a kind of reimagined Heroku. Um, and they've got absolutely great tooling, a ton of good security stuff built in, automatic database backups,
Interesting.
easy deployments, just a really, really nice tool. So that's where the servers and databases all live.
Server.
Yep, exactly. At least one of the servers.
Campaign Genius, very, very Google cloud platform centric,
Nice.
increasing involvement with Cloudflare,
Yep.
as I mentioned. And I think we'll stop there. We did one project on AWS and leaving the DevOps is too much work aside. My God, the documentation never ends to do anything.
Yeah.
Where's the save button? Reading pages and pages later, still no freaking clue, right? And I mean, I get it. They've grown so fast and have so many
Yeah.
services, but
But like even
Mick,
just permissions, figuring
yes,
out
my God.
is everything secure?
Yeah,
Like, have I done security
yeah,
correctly?
yeah, yeah.
Is just a whole. It's days of
It's
effort
days. I just don't have the
versus
patience, man. Like you said,
yeah,
I'll pay
10
a
minutes
bit
of
more if someone
clicking.
else will just like There it is. Okay, cool. Great.
Yep, 100%. Good user experience is definitely worth paying for. Give me an easy button to click, and I will pay you more money for that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, which is in a sense is what you're doing. You're doing that for your customers in a sense, right? Fundamentally,
yeah, that's the
especially with
goal.
that multi editor. That's like woohoo. That's not easy to do.
No,
That's
it's
really
not.
hard to do.
It's a fun problem.
Yeah.
But it's also it's like it's super useful, and it's also some infrastructure around for future feature development and some fun stuff we got coming down after that. Once you've got real time collaboration, there's a
Yeah.
lot of interesting things you can start to do and bring people together you normally don't see together, at least at different stages of the email creation process. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
some fun stuff going.
I read somewhere that the average, whatever average is, the average email, it's like multiple weeks to actually get it done and out the door, and a surprising number of people who have to touch it in some way, whether it's yes
Yeah,
or paint that blue or something like almost ridiculous.
yeah.
How many cooks are in the kitchen,
Stakeholders, yep.
stakeholders, all that other stuff, and you gotta
Yeah,
you
creative
gotta
folks.
you gotta to some extent a lot of them involved, right?
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, looking at all the needs that they have and trying to say like where do we draw lines and also how do we make them more productive? How do we help? How do we make the developer's job easier by simplifying the communication? Like there's just
Yeah.
so many things to work on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I would think. Um, where do you see the company in say a couple of years? Like ideally, you'd like to see happen.
I think that continuing to work with email marketers, I think we're email is where we're going to be. Like I'm not looking multi-channel or anything like that. Um, yeah, and just making it more friendly for everyone on the team to work on email. And yeah, just continuing to hone. There's so much that I would like to do, and so many like just integrations and making it easier to be creative. There's so much. So honestly, I have no idea, but I hope that we've done some cool stuff in 2 years.
uh, I promise we'd arm wrestle about it a little bit. What's your honest take on AMP?
It's a good question. Um, I think that there are a ton of like it's the same problem. It's infrastructure. AMP is super powerful. It's not too much more work to learn beyond HTML. The use cases are there, and the connection points are the sticking points as I see it. Um, so if you move past like, oh, we care about our open rate or our click-through rate, and you move towards like, hey, this is a product email and we want to make it easier for this person to complete this task. And we care about the fewest number of clicks. And so that's our new metric. AMP is the way to go. I think it's a worthwhile investment. And it's also really hard to do well. It's still too hard. And so like there are some really interesting companies doing some stuff there. So, we keep looking for the promise of AMP. And I think maybe this year, but until someone makes it really easy to bring HTML and bring your goal, like the user experience you want, and connect it to your API or to your server, to the rest of your platform, like AMP is just going to be, accordions in your inbox. That's my honest take. So we just need some more connectors, and then I think we can be there. In the same way that, image, generation personalization is a really powerful thing. And if everyone had to build their own infrastructure for that, right? It's not a doable thing. No one would do it. But the fact that there are really amazing tools for it, right? Um, means that you can actually take that extra step.
Yeah.
So
My fear for AMP top line one is that Apple just put a bullet in it. Because
okay,
if they're not going to even allow a pixel to get frickin' opened, there's no way they're going to ever allow something with actual compute and communication
functions.
ability to run, right? It's like, so my biggest
Yeah,
worry is that one's like that alone right there, because we've got this, you know, I just made this up, tech Cold War thing, right? You've got two more or less superpowers because of the foothold in mobile with very different philosophies, honestly,
Yep.
right? Making their own decisions about what they think is best for their customers and their business and going in surprisingly orthogonal directions with a big shared customer base. Like
Yeah.
massive overlap, right? There's an iPhone sitting here. There's a Gmail backend there. That's just
Yep.
me, but I'm not atypical. And oof, if you sent me an AMP email, I'd have one experience here and a different experience there. Ouch.
Mm,
I some of the interesting problems I'd love to see solved with AMP in email are less marketing centric and more function centric. Like
yeah.
everybody loves going, yeah, add to my calendar without having to do that manually. Like
Yep.
blow that up and put that on steroids, and you might pull me that direction, but that's not necessarily the marketing function. And maybe fewer companies could do that well rather than lots of companies having to do that okay, which I think is that's kind of where Martech sits. You know, that
Mm,
I think.
yep.
Yeah, you got to simplify it a lot. So we end up with carousels, as you said.
Yep. And so, yeah. So the Google Apple dichotomy, right? That split there is interesting. With Apple, though, we do get interactive email, right? So that's been, explored to some extent more than I've seen with AMP, right? And if you can make the decision to go, like if you can make the investment or there's a tool to help do both,
Yes.
right, that's really when you hit a really solid percentage of the market, right?
Big time.
Between Apple's 50+% and Gmail's 30 and Yahoo and Mail.ru. Like you get all those folks with
Yeah.
some level of the same interactivity and
Yeah.
yeah, then you still get to fire open pixels on interaction in Apple, at
Yeah.
least right now. And so
For now.
yeah, yeah,
It's like you said about email broadly, it's like never an end to the wait a minute, how does that work?
yep.
Oh, I gotta learn that. Cool. Interesting. Like challenge stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
There's always something else.
There's always something else. Well, dang, I could probably tie up like the whole day talking with you, but you probably
It's
have like
vast.
founder of company stuff to do. If there's a young Avi out there, just finishing up in Maryland and thinking, I really would like to start my own thing. What would you tell that young person?
Work for good people first. I had the desire to do this earlier, and
Yeah,
I'm really glad I got to work with people I did.
that's good advice.
Um, yeah, I think that waiting 4 or 5 years to get started on it was definitely the right decision.
I'm really glad to hear you say that. I've worked at large companies, and it's a real asset to understand how large companies work,
Yep.
especially if you do anything that's remotely an enterprise play like yours. Like you got to understand people you're talking to like very different ball game when there's 1,000 or 2,000 or 100,000 people with the same name on their badge
Yeah.
making decisions. It's like what you said about email. The number of people that weigh in just on an email message, like
It's huge, and
the
it
number,
grows, right?
and
It
it
grows with the
grows.
size of the
Yeah,
team.
and the number of people
Uh,
weigh in on a vendor, monumental.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's the big thing.
That's
Work for
good.
good
That's
people.
that's very good advice. Really is because
Thanks.
startup and founder sort of it's like the rock star of the decade. It's like, oh, I'm going to be a startup founder. It's like you don't know how hard that is, how thankless it is, how much work it is, how risky it is. Like you don't know what you don't know, and like giddy up, go give it a try. But
Yeah.
it's a 90+% chance that it'll
Yep.
right because it's hard.
You got to be willing to accept failure for sure. Which,
Yeah, yeah.
therapy is good for that for sure. Also would recommend that. Just that's a great time too. Um, yeah.
That's good. That's good. But at the same time, we've got this, we're both talking, we're not in an office where we had to drive to commute to get there. It's like the opportunities to try stuff now
It's a
are,
lot of fun.
yeah, yeah, it's there. I think side gigs are a healthy thing for everybody. I know it's hard to muster the energy, but everyone's got something they get and love and could do and contribute. And it's like, okay, turn that into a piece of your world. It doesn't have to be your whole world.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
have some fun with it for sure.
have some
I
fun
like
with it
that.
for sure. Well, cool. So if someone gets all interested in this and says, "Oh, I want to learn more about Parcel," we send them to parcel.io, right?
Yep. And
And the email
totally
resource site again?
email resources. That's email resource and then .es. So like it's the word email resources. But the .es on the end is just the extension, so .com. So it's hard to say out loud, but it looks cool when you type it in.
It
Um,
looks
that's
cool. I
that's
bookmarked it already.
unrelated to Parcel. It's a resource site with over 400 resources for email marketing, creation, analytics, deliverability, like just everything you kind of need in doing email stuff. That's all there. So it's a great place to just, start to find tools for the job.
Well, hey, if you're going to add a podcast section, we'll have your conversation, the first one up there. How's that sound?
Love it.
All right. Hey, listen, we'll wrap up. My guest has been Avi Goldman, founder of Parcel.io. Avi, thanks for the time.
Thank you. Great chatting.
Pause.